The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for 2 Israeli leaders, including Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as one apparently deceased leader of Hamas. And they say on those 2 having to do with Israel that they bear, quote, criminal responsibility for the current and worsening devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Now, they had said back in, I believe, April of this year, somewhere around there, that they were going to pursue these arrest warrants. We reported on that at the time, but it was still a very open question as to whether they'd actually get there. And this is the first time that the ICC has issued arrest warrants against a major US ally, which is not only going to anger that ally, but also, as you'll see, it's going to anger some in the United States government right now. It's also the first time that they've issued warrants against the head of a democratic country, quote unquote. They say that there are reasonable grounds to find that both Benjamin Netanyahu as well as the former defense minister Gallant bear responsibility for the, quote, war crime of starvation as a method of warfare and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. Now, this means that, in theory at least, if either of those individuals were to travel to one of the 125 countries that are party to the Rome Statute that set up the ICC, they could potentially be arrested. That includes many of Israel's allies, of course. It's the majority of the countries in the world. Notably, the US is not among that group and doesn't recognize the ICC's jurisdiction, so I guess they can still come here and speak before Congress or something. And in addition, while much of the commentary is, I think, rightfully focused on the warrants against Gallant and Netanyahu, they also issued a warrant for the arrest of Mohammed Diaf, Hamas's military chief, for crimes against humanity, including murder, hostage taking, and sexual violence. Now, Israel has said that they believe they've already killed him in an airstrike, but the court said that they have not yet been able to confirm or deny whether he is alive or dead, and thus the warrant remains. And so, in theory, they're issuing warrants for people committing war crimes on both sides of this conflict. The conversation about this and the horror that many apparently experienced at someone daring to say that a person like Netanyahu might have committed war crimes is almost universally focused on the warrants against Israel. And they're pretending that this is some sort of biased thing that ignores Hamas's culpability in some of this. Now, I want to give you just some of the responses and then we'll discuss. The office of Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the assertions in this, calling them absurd and false, and said that the court is motivated by anti-Semitism and hatred of the Jewish state, which is the sort of thing that you can copy and paste on literally any accusation of the crimes that we're witnessing on a day-to-day basis, literally with our own eyes. We can see it happening. It's every month, over and over and over, the same thing's happening. Yep, it's just anti-Semitism, just hatred of the Jewish state. And anyway, we can get to the other statements too. Viviana, I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this. I certainly hadn't been expecting it when I woke up.
Yeah, I wonder if the ICC is trying to portray this sort of balanced, both sides, argument to sort of lessen the argument against Israel. But in these statements about, it's wrong to, charge Netanyahu, who else is responsible for the war crimes, if not the head of the state? Just like the United States has participated in war crimes, the buck stops at them. So let's start at the bottom rung of the ladder. There are a lot of allegations, there are a lot of statements, and there is a lot of evidence to show that there has been egregious war crimes against children, against refugees, and even against, the hostage victims, that Hamas has, obviously, sadly partaken in. But when you look at the humanitarian aid and the evidence we have seen of it being ruined or blocked, it is horrendous. And I think if we just focus on even that, the war crime is evident, and Netanyahu is guilty, and his whole entire, cabinet is guilty. Regarding Hamas, that violence, all of that horror that has been done on their side, it still doesn't reach that bottom rung of denying humanitarian aid. And in fact, part of what Hamas has done is try to insist on humanitarian aid. And the fact that other countries like the US are not coming forward to say, we don't want this humanitarian aid blocked. And even their sort of small efforts have just been performative. So yeah. It's absolutely disgusting that I'm anti-war, John. I'm anti-war, so you can't accuse me of any bias against religion. I'm anti-war across the board because we have shown as a planet that we can have peace. The nuclear arms, there's been a decision like we cannot use these. And that has happened for many decades. So I have faith that we can get to that place again. But we have to acknowledge these egregious things that are happening to people and have happened to people since 1978 in Gaza, in Palestine. And we cannot continue to turn a blind eye on that. I'm against imperialism. I think that's why the U.S. is going so hard. This is just in continuation of their arm of imperialism that they have based this country on. And Israel is a benefit of that. And I think that Israel has a huge responsibility with their resources, including that from the United States, to step forward and be the bigger person. I don't see that happening with Netanyahu heading the state. Maybe these allegations will, because I know there's conflict within Israel about the heads of state and how they're handling this. So I think maybe this could spark a change. I'm hopeful.
I don't know. I'm glad that they're doing it. They're doing what they can with the power they have, a power that unfortunately does not apply to either Israel or to the United States in the same way that, the UN or the Security Council might try to do things. But oops, the United States doesn't want it to happen, so it doesn't happen. And indeed, the Biden administration, they're apparently talking with Israel next steps on how to respond to this. I wonder. I'm super curious, edge of my seat, to see what Joe Biden is going to say about this. Interestingly, when the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for his war crimes, Joe Biden said it's justified. And obviously, it is a very different situation. See, in the case of Vladimir Putin, he invaded another country and then waged war on it viciously while claiming he needed to do so to defend his country, and devastated the civilian population and forcibly moved people, wiped out civilians, used sexual violence as a tool of war. Well, I'm sure there's something that's different about it. But anyway, Joe Biden had a problem with it in that context. Look, we're all seeing this. Like the fact that people are starving 8 months after concerns were raised about it. It's not like Gaza is situated on the dark side of the moon. It's right there. Israel can deliver 2,000-pound bombs with pinpoint accuracy to the exact refugee camp they want to hit. And yet they can't get grain there. They just can't do it. They can't do it. They have the free run of all of Gaza and they just can't get it done. I mean, look, this is a joke. Some people obviously are going to be angry about this. They're angry about this not because they've taken a look at all of the evidence and they've come to the conclusion that it's unfair to label these as war crimes. That's just not a defensible position intellectually or morally. They just don't care that it's being done because they think it's justified. They think it's justified because of what people like Benjamin Netanyahu have said, which is conveniently, as I alluded to in my last joke, what every single imperial power has ever said. We had to do it to protect ourselves. They're not even trying to cloak it in any more nuance or moral complexity or anything. It's just, it's bad people there. We need to kill them to defend ourselves. And if that means that thousands and thousands of civilians die, whatever, I really just don't care. And everything that we're saying, everything that you might say is the argument we've been making for literally months. We basically have no influence over this. Even the ICC basically has no influence. And all we can do is to continue to advocate for an end to the conflict. I guess that's all we're left with. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, briefly, I'm just going to go bottom rung with the United States. Again, let's just look at brass tacks here. If it's not just that they didn't agree with the United States, the ICC's decision in regards to war crimes in this case, is that suddenly it's a different situation about acknowledging the authority of the ICC when it comes to Ukraine.
That's a good point.
That's all I have to say. Like, you either believe in its authority or you don't. Which is it?
Exactly. Or you believe in it when it's convenient to you.
Yeah.
And not when otherwise. Again, we're in this time when hypocrisy almost never matters. I'm not going to say never matters, but almost never matters. Still going to point it out, though. It's one of my hobbies.